Hello, and welcome to the video commentary for Goblin issue 7B. I'm going to start off by saying this is it's actually a re-recording. This is the second time I've done this commentary, which is rare. But the first version is so bad. The audio is really bad. Not that the audio is great on this, I'm sure, because, well, let's be honest, it's not like I'm using high quality anything for this except, my laptop's not even high quality. So, anyways, let's just, get right into this. Start by saying I really, really like this cover. The image on here, without the title and the numbering and all that stuff, is actually the image that I use for my flyers when I'm at conventions and passing out flyers. I actually use this image. The hand is actually multiple layers, and what I did was, because it changed the image once I merged it, which happens sometimes in Photoshop when you merge the layers. The image that you're seeing initially will change under the circumstances of being merged with all the other layers. And so there's like 6 layers that when I merged it looked completely different than that. And I actually uploaded some of the results on my DeviantArt account of all the alternate ways that it looked when I would merge the layers in different orders. And this is what they look like unmerged, because I thought it looked best. And so what I had to do was I had to basically use print screen and take a picture of it and send it back in, and then back into Photoshop and crop it and stuff. So what you're looking at is kind of a photograph of the actual image that I had originally. I don't know how to explain it, but I mean, I'm sure you understand. I at this point I was okay with going against those rules about obscuring the title and things like that. I felt like Goblin had been established enough that occasionally I could obscure the title, almost to the point where you can't see the name at all. I think I did it once before, but at this point I was completely okay with it. I thought Jeff is a recognizable enough character for people that know the story, know my art. It's okay. Anyone else that's curious is going to look at this and go, oh, what? And then open. A strange anomaly is that because of the positioning of the character and the positioning of the name, it looks like Jeff has little devil horns behind his head, and that is completely accidental, but hey, whatever. So let's actually get into this issue. I'm gonna try to make this short and sweet. Gosh, I don't even know if I introduced myself, but that's okay. Hopefully, by this point you know who I am and what this is. I don't think I introduced myself. Man, that is okay. So we have Charlie Bode, who hasn't actually been introduced by that name yet, but that is her name. Charlie Bode. Charlie Bode. I just say Charlie Bode really quickly. Is her name, and her hair is looking crazy in this picture. Whatever. And she's basically telling Jeff about the truth that he's seeing. What he was living in was a dream world, and now he's seeing the truth. And very interesting. A lot of these first images, the cobwebs and everything, I don't like the way they looked. They came out very unusual because of the version of Photoshop that I was using at the time, which was version 6. And there is something to be said about the minor tweaks that they do to some of the tool sets in Photoshop, And that's something that I've noticed the difference between using the lasso tool in 6 and using the lasso tool in CS3, which I wasn't able to use at this point. I was having a lot of problems with my hard drive. It was failing. It was dying. And so Photoshop just denied me access left and right. CS3 at least. And so what I had to do is install 6, which for some odd reason never fails, never gives me problems. It's kind of true of older Adobe programs. Older Adobe products are like solid cars, they're like nice solid cars, nice solid anything, nice solid product, I should say. They just don't really fail. They're a little obsolete, in the sense that they don't have all the little bells and whistles, but honestly, it gets the job done. And that's what was going on here. And so they look really choppy and weird. I don't really like the way they look. I like that head turn though. Yeah. And I was going for a little creepy atmosphere here with the town all drenched in cobwebs and these little arachnid creatures creeping around the surface of the buildings. Stuff. Jeff and Charlie Bode, which I almost called Amy just then. So used to Jeff and Amy, always paired up together. Running. I'm going to actually talk about this. I'm trying to remember everything that I talked about the first time around, but I realized that first time I talked, I went off on many tangents, and I'm going to wrangle it in this time and kind of get straight to it and touch on some things that I can remember off the top of my head. Sorry. I really hate the fact that I'm talking about the fact that, there's some version of this commentary out there that may have had more information or something, but not really. It just had me, talking for almost 2 hours. So, yeah, one of the things about this picture that I love so much is the difference, excuse me, in their running. Their size is really apparent here. Charlie Bode is this little kid, this little girl with short little legs. I mean, they're actually kind of long. She's actually kind of lanky. For really her size and her age. I assume she's probably about 11. She's about 11, 12 right now. She's actually kind of tall and lanky for that age. Considering, Jeff, who, look at him. He's a lot, his stride is a lot wider than hers, he really has, he almost leaps when he runs, and I love that, he's really striding wide. He's really pushing himself when he moves, and you can see, Charlie Bode is making little tiny steps trying to keep up, you can imagine for every 2 steps that Jeff makes, Charlie Bode probably makes 4 to 6 or so. I don't know. A lot. Charlie Bode. I just like to saying the name. Sorry. So crashing through the door. I didn't even want to mention, but I will, that the original idea, there was a, it is kind of mentioned in this story, but it's brief. But there was actually an incantation on the door. He broke the incantation, which allows Charlie Bode to go into the actual building that's keeping all the people protected in the town, as well as the main creature, which is actually Canastra. And Jeff was being used completely as a tool to even get into the town by Charlie Bode, which had a incantation over it that created an illusion so that Charlie Bode couldn't find the town, couldn't locate it, couldn't pinpoint it or anything. and she purposely used Jeff, who was himself a logicsmith, who I guess up to this point she hadn't come in contact with another one, and she used him to basically, get her way into the town. And I just thought I thought it was interesting. It was just a little passing thing that comes up in the story very passingly. And originally it took more precedent, and I trimmed it down. I really wanted to get this story kind of rolling, really, and get all the details, the major details, hammered out. And I didn't have time to kind of, I guess, dilly dally. I didn't really want to play around too much with a lot of the unnecessary details of this world right now. I mean, there's plenty of time to get into some of the stranger or more intricate aspects, but this I didn't see necessarily as one. This is a vessel, this is kind of a mini arc, a vessel sort of bringing you over this hump into the next major arc, which is starts with issue 8A, and that being the Red Castle arc. But that's not to diminish this story at all, because it's very significant, this story, and its significance will come to prominence a little bit later in the series. This picture was actually added in later. It was a change in direction. Originally, he came in, and you saw from his perspective straight across, and you saw the stairway, and you saw the big hole in the floor, and you didn't see that it went down really. You just saw black, and you just saw the other side of the mansion. And I thought it kind of unnecessary to focus on that, and instead to focus on the actual direction that the story was going, literally down. And so I showed sort of a POV, showing what Jeff was seeing, and he sees this open pit right underneath his feet. And I just thought it made for a better sort of dramatic image, And I was at a real handicap because of a lot of the textures, the texture pack's missing because I was using 6. And so everything that I had planned for this entire town, I think I had mentioned it on the last commentary on 7A, it was thrown in the air, and I had to adapt, but I couldn't completely adapt. Like, the interior of this mansion was supposed to be dusty and covered in cobwebs and things like that, and I couldn't do it because a lot of it was reliant on textures, and so I just left it alone. And really, this is like the only picture where you see that. So, there were supposed to be others, but there was supposed to be a little bit more dialogue up there. But things get cut sometimes just to move a story along, and really that's what needed to happen. The story needed to move downstairs. Really, it needed to, where a lot of the story really takes place. I like this picture because of just the way the color works in here. The foreground colors and the background colors. I like the way that they work all together. I do like. There are a lot of images in this issue of people jumping and falling, and just because I like that free form image. I like the image of falling. It's very loose, and I don't know. I've always liked it, but I do it a lot in here. But this is really just. I like it because it's just like it shows exactly where they were. They had no choice. It's either be attacked by these things or face what's in front of you, and they jump. Another free falling image. I love this one. It's really cool. It's a little stiff, but and then of course they jump in. And I was originally going to have them just kind of walk around, like around the edges of the thing, and later on they do scale the wall. They just walk down it instead of jumping in. And my whole idea of that was, just kind of having observed ants and just insects in general, and their entire relationship with gravity and just physics in general, and how it's not the same relationship we have. And I'm kind of envious in a way. Whereas I've watched an ant crawl across a hardwood floor, and with us, you walk across a hardwood floor and you hit the wall, and you have no choice but to walk around the wall along the hardwood floor. That's the end of that path. That path is limited. For an ant, he hits the wall, and it's nothing more than another surface for which he moves across. And so he just walks up the wall. He walks up the wall, and eventually he hits the ceiling. It's just another surface. He can walk across the ceiling. Now, for each shift, yes, gravity takes more of a toll on him. It slows him down a little bit, and it requires him to use more of his strength. But it means very little to him. It's just all surface. It's all path, and that's kind of I was thinking a lot about that, at this point, and I was just like, wow, that's just kind of like, I hope I'm not repeating something that I said in 7A, but ultimately that was kind of like, that was like the philosophy that I wanted to take. I wanted to, up to that point, like up to a certain point in my life, I would let things deter me that would get in my path, and ultimately what I had to do was just kind of you take that thing and you just kind of move around it. You adapt to it and you move through it. Not necessarily through it, but around it, like an ant would over the surface. It's just another surface. Makes a lot more sense in my head than when I hear it out loud. But it's just a weird little philosophy, just about life, moving through life. You just adapt and kind of keep moving forward. Just keep going. Don't let a strange obstacle deter you, stop you, even make you really stop and think too long. The longer you think, the more the possibility that you won't ever move forward to that next step. So this guy's sliding down here. I love the fact that Charlie Broad lands on her feet, just like a cat, and Jeff kind of lands on his butt, and he's sliding down this concrete on his butt. It's just so horrible, and he lands, and sort of an ease of the tension. I do that sometimes, like I'll have like a really serious situation, and then I'll ease it up with something silly in the middle, and it's just the way that my brain works. I like those kinds of stories where it's not always serious, because that's life. Life is not always serious. It's otherwise I wouldn't even be creating the story if life was always serious. But even when you're trying to be serious, things happen that aren't serious, where if too many people were there witnessing it, it would be a joke. So yeah, let's not analyze that too much. It's just Jeff falling on his butt. Pretty much from here on, what I was doing was I was presenting the reader with this idea that what's happening is, up to this point, Jeff has been his own person, very independent. Not listen. He doesn't listen to anyone. He makes his own rules. He's just kind of like, what did you say? Screw you. I'm off over here doing my own thing. Whatever. Not that he doesn't care, but he has really no reason to stop and take orders from anyone or be influenced by anyone, and yet here he is being influenced by Charlie Broad, and not even questioning it at all. These things that Charlie Broad is telling him, he's not questioning at all. He's just taking it all in, and it's very, very unusual for his character. And it's supposed to sort of it's actually along the same lines of how out of character it was for Amy to just wake up in the middle of the night and walk off in this place that she had never been. Very out of character, but and that's what this whole thing is about. It's just out of character, and there's a reason why things are out of character. Of course, this reasoning is he's being used. He's actually being manipulated by Cholibot. She's actually intentionally making sure that he stays, his adrenaline stays high, that his mind is unclear, and so she says things, and the things that she tells him have an attachment to him. She talks about Amy and his friends, and she talks about family and things like that, and that kind of stuff is core to him. She basically figured him out really quick, and used that to manipulate him. And I was hoping that people would notice that, that Jeff was being a little uncharacteristic, but I don't know. Maybe people did. I don't know. But that was my hope. That was my intention, to make it not super obvious, but somewhat obvious. So Jeff talking about the fever dream that he had before. I do like these scenes, just kind of back and forth from different sort of slightly, different perspectives. This super close up of Jeff, but it's really Cholibot that's doing the major talking here. And of course, the creatures scaling down the wall, very much influenced by the aliens in the movie series Aliens, and on mostly the second one, Aliens. There were some definite scenes where they were scaling walls, crawling out of crevices and things like that, and that kind of thing sticks with you, and it's creepy, and because of the way that they moved. And so, that's how it played out in my head. It was very animated in my head, and that's how these guys were scaling down the walls when I was thinking about it. And the thing about the whole thing about it is it's really a matter of perspective, like what's going on between Jeff and these creatures. He instantly tears into them as if they are an enemy, and the truth is they're not an enemy. It's just that since they are just basic animals, they don't really have a great understanding of how to speak to Jeff, how to tell him exactly what's going on. Because the truth is that they're after Cholibot. Cholibot is the enemy within. She is the intruder, and they're after her. They want to separate Jeff from her. But because of the nature of their being, them being arachnid-like, the best way that they can think of doing it is by cocooning Jeff and separating him physically separating him from her. And so it looks like they're attacking, and that's how Jeff interprets it, because this is Jeff's life. Jeff has grown up to this point in the middle of seeing war and all sorts of chaos, death, and just hatred and anger and all these things, just aggressive. Not that he's never known love, but love has been less. Caring has been less. Caring about other people has been less. Mostly he cares about himself and the people, a lot of people that are no longer around, like his family, his mother, his father. These people are no longer around, and and so he attacks. Everything is high. The adrenaline is high. And he perceives it as an attack. They perceive it as sort of a rescue, and it's the way that things work in the world, and in reality as well as their reality, our reality and their reality. Different things come into play, that create that shape and mold a person, their character, how they work in certain situations and environments. All these things come into play. The culture that the primary cultures they're exposed to and grow up in, the environment they're exposed to and grow up in, all sorts of things, and all the way down to like the time period that they've grown up in, and just different things, friends and family, all sorts of things external of yourself that are a part of yourself, that define yourself, that create you as you're growing up, and become your psychological self, your emotional self, all these things really come to life when you're in a situation where you must decide, make a decision. And two people that seem very similar can make a completely different situation in the same scenario because they grew up exposed to different things, different environments, different people, different cultures, different natures. And that's all that's really what's going on here. And Jeff just attacks. He perceives himself as being under attack, so he attacks back when that's not the case. But he doesn't know this yet because he didn't stop to figure out. From the woods, it seemed like one big attack. And it's all a part of the nature of the logic smith in this contemporary era. They are under attack. Logic smiths are like an endangered species on this world because it's outlawed. And so, you're constantly having to make sure that you don't let too many people know that you're a logic smith. And you have to be careful of the things you do, the things you say, the way you present yourself. And he's only slightly careful because, honestly, he wouldn't wear those earrings if he cared too much. But not a lot of people really know that is a clear sign, except for people like Amy, who study logic and logic smiths. Anyways, I love this free fall. Technically, that would have yanked his arm out of the socket, and the original story did have his arm get pulled out the socket, and it was knocked back in place. I'm not sure that you can do that without still needing to go to the hospital. I think that may just be a temporary fix. I'm not sure, though. It's never happened to me, so I don't know. And, Hollywood. You can't rely on Hollywood to feed you proper information or depictions of anything realistic, really. Very little is real. So I don't know. I love like how a lot of this part of the story is portrayed. It's just very strange and kind of creepy. Suddenly he's thrust into this area and all these cocoons are around and stuff, and it was supposed to be kind of creepy, but still not dark creepy. I didn't want it to be dark creepy, like nightmarish creepy or anything like that, but unnerving a little for someone that's never experienced such a thing. And he's definitely never experienced that, and he can see a person in there, not clearly, about as much as we can, but you can tell that's a person in there, and it freaks him out. And I love the way this rips off the wall and flump. I just love that this entire area is just filled with the entire town, and probably a couple of people that have wandered through the forest, and to prevent Charlie Bud from getting to them, they were cocooned up. Because that's all Charlie Bud's been trying to do this entire time, is find someone that could help her find this town so that she could finish her feud, essentially, with Canastra. Which is really silly. But that's kind of the nature of beings of the higher universe. They really don't care about anyone else except for themselves. Or that's the mentality. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later, hopefully, if I remember to talk about it. I don't know why she's squinting like that. I don't know why I drew that. I guess I just felt like drawing it that way. I don't know why. And so she's right back at it, filling his head with all this stuff. The idea, friends, family, all this stuff, making sure that she's staying manipulative, making sure that she's pulling his strings constantly, keeping him nice and angry, confused, angry. And okay, well, here I've actually been waiting a little while to actually talk about this. This name calling that's going on here is actually, I like this picture. It's actually inverted. The one that comes after this originally they were reversed. This one and the one after it were switched. First you saw the creature, then you saw the shadow, but I thought it's better to reveal the shadow first, then the creature. It's more dramatic. But anyways, the name calling is actually a callback to issue 4. Whichever one, Jeff, where he wakes up in the basement with no doors, and then someone starts calling him. Canastra was calling him all the way from this town. She was calling out to him to come here, to help her, because she knew that Charliebot was getting closer. And so, really, that sounded weird. Really, what was going on was both of them were pretty much trying to get Jeff on their side. Not necessarily, one was to destroy the other was to preserve life, the lives of the entire town, to help preserve the lives of the entire town. Because while Charliebot is not necessarily out to kill the entire town, if she kills Canastra, if Canastra dies, everyone that's been cocooned all these years, like 40 years, they will die. And so she called on whoever could hear to come, and Jeff was the closest in proximity. You would think maybe J. Mephisto, but who knows what goes on in J. Mephisto's head really that kept him from being called. And maybe there's a reason why Jeff was being called. We'll get into that more in the future of the book. And so you see Amy, and I think that's a really awesome pose. It's like, Amy, yeah, awesome. And of course, Charliebot is feeding Jeff more. She's telling him, that this is, it's all an illusion, that, it's still a psychic connection, and that he isn't completely free of the spell that's been placed on him by the venom that was introduced to his body through the web dart that he was hit with from the arachnid, which is completely false. Of course, now it's too late. They don't really have a means to attack. They've been surrounded. I love this picture. They're all just bustling around Jeff, throwing up dirt and stuff. Just kicking up dirt with their movement and stuff. And Jeff's just he's a little panicky because he doesn't know what's going to happen to him. And it's like fight. You got to fight your way out. And you can instantly see right away there's a difference between what's happening, the two fates of these characters. Right away you see Charliebot is being attacked. She's being restrained, but she's also being pierced. They're essentially like threading her. Look at that. They're going straight through her. And if you look at Jeff, he's being restrained. The web darts are wrapping around him and holding him down. None of them are piercing him. And that's I was hoping that people didn't notice that exactly, right off the bat. As soon as they started reading, I wanted them to kind of go back through and notice that. But Jeff, from his perspective, he assumes he's being attacked the same way that Charliebot is being attacked. Well, clearly he's not. Amy kicking in someone's back. I just really like the idea of Amy just being really, really action-y. She's just taking on a very action-oriented role in here. And there goes Charliebot falling and dying. Yeah. And Jeff, not liking that at all. And he's just really, really angry at this whole situation, and of course, Amy is very calmly, trying to tell him, she's trying to, be apologetic and tell him, you need to calm down. And, Jeff is just steaming, and he's a little bit like myself in the sense that, I'll be honest, part of this is, it's like, well, I'll talk about it in a minute, like, as the story plays on, like, he's just kind of, like, stop using that face, you're not Amy, he's still believing in what Charlie Boy told him about this is not Amy, this is an illusion, and that's not the real nature of this thing that you're up against. And he thinks he's a prisoner, obviously, and he's just so angry. And she's, she explains to him, and she's like, no, and that's the thing, this is really Amy. This is Amy. It's not her speaking, it's Canastra speaking through her. She is essentially possessed. It's Canastra speaking through her, but Amy is physically there. She's not in one of the cocoons somewhere up on the wall. She is physically sitting there, squatting there next to Jeff. And so she goes into, Canastra goes into the whole thing, and basically, I cut a bit of the exposition that was going on here because I couldn't figure out the best way to convey exactly what was going on, and I'll just explain it a little bit since it's a little convoluted. Essentially, Canastra, being of the higher universe, is at war with Cholibot, another being of the higher universe. Their world is a parallel of the higher universe, is a parallel of the middle universe, is a parallel of the lower universe, the lesser universe. They're all, just like anything. They're people that get along, people that are at war. And so, Cholibot, Canastra, escapes to the plane of the lesser universe and takes on this physical form to hide as this animal, this arachnid animal, and is wounded by. I'm actually not. Well, she was wounded, and in this time, 40 years ago, Alma's little sister. This is Alma's little sister. This is the same girl that woke Amy up. Alma's little sister, or rather, the girl that woke Amy up actually was a projection, a physical projection of this girl, which is something that Canastra can do. But I didn't get into those details, and I really regret not getting into those exact details. I'm sorry. I'm a little distracted because I'm sitting next to the window, and the clouds have just come in, and they are really dark. So she's rescued, Canastra is rescued, this injured Canastra is rescued by this little girl and taken home. And so they're friends, and she becomes like her pet, because she's wounded and she's injured and she's in this form and she can't get out. She's kind of trapped in this form pretty much until she dies. And that's the problem. That's the problem with doing this kind of thing. You can become trapped in this form, and that's what's happened. She's trapped in this form until she dies, which may take who knows how long. It may take a long time. Of course, she can also prolong her life, which is actually what has happened, which is why she's much bigger and a different color than she initially starts off here. As she has prolonged her life. She has decided to stay in this form, and the reason why is Alma's little sister here actually falls into a fever and then goes into a coma, and basically is at the doorstep of death. And Canastra had been in this body for so long and been with this little girl for so long as a pet, in a way, that she became connected to her and her family, and in a sense, even the town. Everyone's connected. And so she was able to be connected through this little girl to this entire town. And these beings of the higher universe, which are normally very much detached from not so much beings of the middle universe, but definitely beings of the lesser universe, suddenly, not all of them, but for the most part they are very disconnected, but suddenly she's very connected. All life is life. You know, everything is everything. The balance is everything. The balance is infinite. You know, and so she doesn't want to see this little girl die. And I mean, honestly, that's a part of me. You know, like I have this thing where I hate to see a kid die. You know, I hate, you know, seeing on the news that some child died. You know, I feel like every kid should get the opportunity to grow up and live their life. And while I know none of us are promised a full 100 years of life, you know, it seems like such I don't know, such a kick in the nose. You know, it seems so unfair for a kid not to at least be able to reach adulthood. You know, I mean, to fully experience a childhood. And so, you know, I mean, that's kind of me, you know, my personal thing, my personal self projecting through this character and stuff in this scenario. And so basically what she did was she cocoons the entire town. She puts everyone to sleep, cocoons the entire town, and protects them because, well, they're at war. You know, and she couldn't bear the idea, you know, the war was getting closer to the area, and she didn't want to see these people die. She didn't want to see this little girl die, and the people that she loved, and the town, and all these people, you know, that she was suddenly connected to. You know, she wanted to preserve this life. And so this is what she did to preserve it. And it's a little selfish of her, but there's something to be said about specific ideas of selfishness. There's something to be said about selfishness in general, you know? And it's also, there's something to be said about what is good. You know, what is actually good? Is this good, what she has done? Or, you know, I mean, someone would walk in and say, no, this is not good. You know, you should let the course of events happen the way they should, you know, naturally. If these people were destined to be wiped out by the war, or just died of natural old age, or die of natural circumstance, then they have to. And some people would walk in and say, no, this is a wonderful thing that Canastra has done. And that's the thing, you know, I mean, and so Canastra is just, this whole thing is just Canastra having to deal with this idea. And it's all, you know, very, very confusing to her. And so, but this was her final decision. And so she called Jeff in, though, to help her, though, because she's becoming weaker and weaker the longer she stays in that body. And now at this point, she's in that body on purpose. She's been trapped in that body, and she's at the point where she could die. If she let go, she could die and then return to her normal form. Of course, then everything, she wouldn't be able to return for a very long time. And that's actually something I bring up later on in the story. And everything that she was holding on to, that would be the end of it. So anyways, so she was weak, and so she had to call in. She called in Jeff, basically to help her, you know, to preserve this life. Cholibot was just essentially just kind of being the same character, just destructive, out for vengeance, blah blah blah. This Canastra had moved on from that initial self, warring with Cholibot, and had now taken on a different life, and had learned a different way of existence. Kind of, you know, had gained even an enlightenment in such an enlightened state as a being of the higher universe could be, you know. But that's something that's actually talked about in this issue, that the beings of the higher universe have been such for so long that they've become so disconnected from what is to us mortal life. While they're not immortal, it's far less mortal than someone like Jeff. And just that kind of world, you know, and all the things that come with that world, you know? And it just becomes so disconnected from that kind of existence that being here kind of made Canastra just see everything, reality, existence in a whole different light. And so this is Jeff kind of coming to terms with it. He's just realizing, you know, okay, no logic smith can do that. You know, animals can't use logic. And he's like, you know, no one can possess people the way that you're, you know, supposedly doing. And he's like, the only people that have been known to do that are beings of the higher universe, is what he realizes, and you see it in his face that he's making as he comes to that realization. I think that's kind of cool. And she frees him, and so. But of course, Jeff being Jeff, he's very, you know, irreverent, as Canastra puts it, and you know, very irreverent. You know, in that an anima ruha, a being of the higher universe, normally would get respect, a lot of respect, almost bowing and groveling from, you know, a logic smith, and far more from someone who wasn't a logic smith. And yet Jeff is just kind of like, well, no, you're just another person, really, to me, especially, you know, when you're in this form that looks like Amy. You know, I mean, blah, whatever. And I really like this scene because of Amy, one, the head turn on Amy, but also Jeff's eyes. They move ever so slightly. But I also like Amy's top lip has a little bit of shadow on it. I don't know. There's something about I don't like the curve on it. It's a really nice touch that I don't often do on her character. I don't know why. And this is the first time that Charlie Bald's name is actually said. Canastra's name isn't actually said till later, and then we see the resurrection of Charlie Bald. And she admits pretty much that she's been manipulating Jeff the whole time, using his anger to keep him from thinking straight, you know, just being emotional and just, you know, you can see in the things that she says, the way that beings of the higher universe generally think about beings of the lesser universe, that they're emotional, pure emotional, that they're not noble as they are. But when you really think about it, how is what's going on between Charlie Bald and Canastra any less emotional than what is going on between Jeff and really the Crimson King, even though they're not in direct conflict with each other? I mean, they're in a long distance sort of war. You know, I mean, the Crimson King has declared war on all logic smiths, and Jeff is a logic smith whose family was killed by the Crimson King's war campaigns. So, you know, how is it any different? And yet, you know, it's all about perspective. You know, it's all about personal perspective. And I mean, that's just I don't. Anyways, I do like the way the little arachnids are all squishy and just it's just brutal. But yeah. Oh, and then we see not necessarily Charlie Bald's true form, but certainly a form that it has chosen to take, far more vicious form. And those eyes creep me out. Sort of based on cats and lizards and things that have those that specific sort of iris that can contract that way. It just, you know, it's one of those things that kind of freaked me out when I was a kid. Freaked me out, but at the same time, really interested me. You know, I was just like, whoa, you know, looking at a cat in the face, and clearly the cat was focusing on me because its eyes did that and stuff, and I was just like, whoa, what is that? My eyes don't do that. Somebody actually asked me about this, if this gesture that he was doing was sort of another way of giving the finger, and yes, it is. Essentially, it's a way of giving the finger, sort of dismissing, and so is that phrase that he says, fe, fe. It's sort of like meh, fe, kind of like that. It's like fe. It's like disagreeing, you know, just kind of like disagreeing with the entire situation that's going on. And that was something about the earliest version of Jeff that I had written in. He said that a lot, you know. He would say it a lot, just because he was just like he didn't care about anything back then, and so that was kind of, you know, just me, you know, sort of playing around with that, you know, with, you know, by myself, you know, just kind of like, it was more so for me than anyone else that he said that. And then Amy takes off, and she runs at this thing, and I like this sequence of Charlie Bud flipping over Amy / Canastra, and she jumps up, and she takes her, you know, and I want to talk about right quick. I want to really quickly. I want to try to talk about the difference between the abilities that Amy / Canastra is emitting and everything else that's been shown from this point prior to this point, as far as physical depictions of logic. The same rules do not apply to beings of the higher universe that apply to, say, Jeff or anyone of the lesser universe. As in the spectrum, whereas warmer colors are generally more intense, stronger, more difficult incantations and logic, you know, and the cooler colors are weaker, lesser, easier to learn, things like that. And that's not true in the world of, as far as beings of the higher universe, the Anima Ruha, because there is no real boundary to them, you know, to their knowledge of logic, you know. They're kind of like the keepers of all secrets of the universe, kind of thing. So they understand, you know, even the weakest looking color, you know, like the coolest color for them, which would essentially be the weakest, is still stronger than anything a logic smith of the lesser universe could do, you know? And with them, a lot of the depictions are actually pastel, colors that are sort of more pastel than they are solid, strong, or intense colors. They're more pastel-y, like you get more pastel sort of blues and reds, purplies and things like that. They're more pastelish and more translucent. And another artifact is actually what you're seeing in this picture, where all those little daggers that are floating up around Amy and even poking through the coming through Charlie Bald's chest from that punch that Amy gave to her back. They manifest themselves in this sort of ghostly way. You know, they can manipulate logic almost as if it's something even more physical than it is. You know, they can manipulate it almost to where it's alive. You know, and that's what's happening here. You know, it's snaking all around everything, and she punches, and it just kind of explodes out of Charlie Bald. You know, the essence that is inside of Charlie Bald kind of pops through. You know, like it's almost been punched through. You know, what's inside has been knocked out, and yeah, you can say, instead of like blood really being coughed up or anything, you know, this stuff is leaking out. You know, this logic, you know, this essence of it is kind of coming out, and it's sort of snaking out in this sort of free form, sort of smoke like waving patterns and stuff. And then, of course, you know, I mean, she can actually manifest it into these sort of ghostly sort of wings that she has, and that's what keeps her, you know, flying and stuff. She can actually, well, less flying than it is sort of levitating, because she's not like flying around. She doesn't have to flap her wings or anything. She just kind of hovers. But she can also push herself around with this, you know, just the force of logic itself, you know. That kick is awesome. It's got so much power behind it. I love it. So intense. And just Jeff just in utter awe at all this. Canastra hitting the ground pretty hard. And I mean, not Canastra, Charlie Bald hitting the ground pretty hard. And I can actually say that if Jeff was kicked by that, he would have died. But clearly, because Canastra and Charlie Bald are different, these kind of things wouldn't kill them. Although Canastra is probably a little bit more in danger than Charlie Bald, because she's using Amy's body, not actually. She's possessed it, but she's not physically in that body. She's just kind of possessed it. She has, her physical body is the big green creature, the big green animal that's in the center of the room, whereas Charlie Bald is in that body. So it's easier for Charlie Bald to manipulate that body and maintain and keep from succumbing to the injuries. Whereas using Amy as sort of a suit, if you will, sort of like a jacket, a loose fitting jacket, means that jacket could get ripped off at any time. That jacket is, it can be weathered, it can be damaged, it can succumb to anything. And that's not really necessarily a chance that Canastra wants to take 100%, but at this point she is very desperate. I say she, but really neither one, Canastra nor Charlie Bald, are neither male or female. They are anima ruha, which are beyond sexual orientation. They don't need it, but these are the forms that they've chosen here. As far as Amy, this animal, which we don't know if it's a male or female, and Charlie Bald. So, hey, whatever. And so she's hovering, but clearly Charlie Bald has somehow moved around behind her in all the chaos, and Jeff does not like that. Yeah, I actually had a heck of a time doing these. I wasn't sure how I was going to do this, and actually make it look like it was going around her arm. So it was just a matter of different layers at different parts, looking like they're all together, but they're not. But yay, it came out. I was happy with the end result. I like this picture of Amy. Her little sideburny things, or her little hair tufts on the side, are getting kind of ruffly, getting scruffy. You can kind of see, like the morphing sort of look, the very organic sort of look, and how it's flowing out of Charlie Bald's body, and yeah, it's just they treat logic in a different way. It's far more different than how, well, at least your basic logic smith like Jeff could do, could understand. And I love this scene that's coming up with Amy free falling here. I don't know, it's just such a peaceful, graceful image to me. I don't know, I like it. And then it's very animated, and then this one is very animated to me too. And this was kind of like that point when I realized that I had really developed as an artist, that I had changed, I kind of pushed forward, where I realized, that I had moved back into exaggeration in order to depict action, where it was like, just go, just have fun, and just be animated about it, just tell the story. And so that's what I was doing, just telling the story. And here you can see an example. See, it's more pastel-y. The logic that's being produced is more pastel-y. At this point, Jeff is being puppeted. He's a puppet through by Canastra. Both Amy and Jeff are both being manipulated at this point. And since Jeff's body is more used to using logic, Canastra saw it fit to use him, versus Amy, who doesn't use logic. She's never used logic, so making her produce it put a really, really big strain on her body, and she was getting tired really quick, and Canastra could tell, and that's why she just kind of let Jeff do it. She took on Jeff Jeff's body. But she was using both of them at the same time, which wasn't really good. She kind of split herself into these two forms. But really, she didn't want to leave Amy defenseless because, well, who knows? Charlie Blood might actually go after Amy. I love this, like Jeff using this little bit of logic that he uses. It's kind of his trademark, one of his little trademarks. And with this one, it's actually both him and Amy that crumbled into dust. It's really hard to see Amy's little head right back there, but that's her head. It's both of them. Really should be more bits than that, but whatever. And of course, they were behind Charlie Blood the whole time. And here you can see, like, Canastra manipulating Amy, who is holding on to Jeff, essentially manipulating Jeff. So one leads into the other to defeat Charlie Blood, to actually use this last thrust through. And it's just like, amplify, just kind of trying to amplify it as much as possible. And he just kind of slices up. I love that look, where he slices up and it's just, and then it just kind of slides apart. And you can see, Charlie Blood's little brain and the brainstem and his esophagus there. It's just really gross and awesome at the same time. A little bit of intestines, a little bit of bone in there. But I love the arc of Jeff. That's a great arc. I had fun with this issue, definitely. And then gliding back down and explaining. And this is the part where he asks, "Is she dead?" Because he knows. Well, these are both beings of the higher universe. Do you die? And Canastra's like, no, she's dead on this plane. Charlie Blood is dead on this plane, and it's essentially, as soon as she was killed, she's returned back to the higher universe. And the thing about it is, like, the thing is, it's going to take a very, very long time for her to return. If she decides to return, it would take forever for her to return. And by the time she does get here, like, Canastra is like, well, the planet wouldn't even exist anymore by that point. By the time that it takes, which isn't necessarily true, but whatever. There are ways around that, but we won't get into that just yet. Just a little tease for you. And so, she apologizes to Jeff because he realizes that wasn't him, that was her that was doing all that stuff. He's been being manipulated the whole time the same way Amy was. And she explains about the situation with Amy's body and that it wasn't used to using logic, so, she had to split between the two and stuff. And he's like, well, he still doesn't like being treated like a puppet because it just makes him think about what was happening with him and Sank. What was happening between him and Sankofa was essentially the same thing, but less Jeff being in control. Here, Jeff was still in control, but he thought he was the one doing all of this, but really he was being loosely manipulated by Canastra, that's just what a being of the higher universe can do. Whereas Sankofa had to be in Jeff's mind and actually in there physically manipulating him, transforming him. And so it was like if someone invaded your mind and shut off your switch so that you're still looking through your eyes, but everything you do is not decided by you. It's someone else or something else that's moving you around. And it's like you're seeing it, but you can't fight it. You can't control it, And that's what was going on, and that's why he was so upset back then. But definitely, and that's something that the characters will get more into. There's a little bit of spoilers in this commentary. Oh! So anyways, and she explains the entire reason because, Jeff is saying as far as he and everyone else from on his planet knows, and on the lesser, on the lesser universe beings, as far as they know, beings of the higher universe don't care about them. And she's explaining, no, it's not the case. It's not always the case. And and she's just, there's some things that are said that I won't even talk about here and now. I'll talk about in some other commentary further off that's being talked about here. I'll let you read through it and really sit and think about maybe what's being talked about here, and decide for yourself what's being talked about. But I'm not going to elaborate too much on that. I'm just talking about I had a lot of fun with these pictures and the gradations and things like that. And hooray! I didn't mean that hooray as in Amy passing out or anything, but just hooray for the colors. And just Amy talking about her legs and arms hurting, which makes sense. If you've never used Logic before, I'm pretty sure the first time every Logic Smith uses Logic, that first day, that first week, probably that first month, you are in a lot of pain. Because you're using your body in a way that you've never used it before. So yeah, it probably hurts. It's probably like I don't know. I can't even think. I guess learning to swim, learning to ride a bike. Things that are outside of our normal sort of physical world. We walk, we run, we jump. Things like that. But then swimming is something physical and normal, but it's abnormal in the sense that we now have put ourselves in water and we're going through the water. We're physically pushing ourselves through the water. So it requires more energy, more muscle, it requires more of our body, of our minds, everything, concentration, everything is needed. And so when we're finished swimming, it's just exhausting, not necessarily always to the point where you're just really, really exhausted. Sometimes it's a fun exhaustion, if you're playing swimming, but exhausted. Your body comes out feeling different than it did going in. Same with, the first time when you learn to ride a bike, it's more exercise than it is just fun. And it's painful. You're using muscles in a slightly different way. They're slightly altered in the way that you're using them from your normal life. But that's all that's going on. It's, yeah. And Mumu and Sankofa return in a sort of return. Not really. And then we cut to this part of the story where it's sometime later and Amy can't remember a thing. She cannot remember a thing about being possessed, which is interesting because Canastra let Jeff remember that he had been possessed. He remembers all that took place. Amy, she decided not to. That is me pretty much dropping a little hint at future events. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Oh my gosh. Stay tuned. Maybe something will come of that. And two characters just they ride towards their goal and the next story arc. The Red Castle story arc. Yay! So, I hope you enjoyed this little bit of commentary. I apologize for not elaborating as much as I did the first time around, and I'm really sorry that the audio on that version is really bad, so I had to redo it, and I tried to remember all the stuff that I had talked about there, but of course, I go off on natural tangents, so there's tons of stuff that was left out, but you didn't really miss much, to be honest, except for me just rambling, that's all. All the major stuff that I elaborated on, I re-elaborated, reiterated. So, thank you for sitting along through all this insanity. I hope it was entertaining, and I hope you found the series to this point entertaining. And hopefully you'll continue through the rest of the story and on through the Red Castle story arc, and even in both, the stories with and without commentary. I mean, but hopefully you'll stick around for those commentaries, because there are a few things in there that I'll probably say that are a little interesting about the creation of that entire story, because that story has changed a lot, kind of like the whole series. But we'll talk about it when we get there. Hopefully we'll get there together. That was corny, but whatever. All right. Thank you and goodbye.